David Reeser, and I am serving as the chair for this STIF Advisory Committee with Lane Transit District. Welcome. Today is November 4th, Monday, and this meeting will go from 5 p.m. to 6:30. And we have a lot to get through, a lot of presentations, a lot of information. And my understanding is we are, and it does appear we're short a few folks, but we do have enough for a quorum tonight. So we'll go ahead and do a quick roll call to get us started. Phil Barnhart. Absent? Or is he online?
He online?
I can't see.
He is not online.
He's not, okay. So absent. Kelly Clark. Josh Kaczynski.
Present.
Brenda Kosadar. Absent. Susie Lacer. Joshua Myatt. And we have Phil Barnhart joining us. Phil, we're just doing a roll call right now. Thank you for joining us. Eugene Oregon. Absent. Cosette Reese.
Present.
David Reeser, I'm here. Carrie Turner.
Here.
Thank you, Carrie. Vidal Francis is absent. Gino Grimaldi, absent. And Pete Knox.
Here.
Is here. Thank you all. All right, well, let me draw your attention to the agenda. Hopefully you have that in front of you. We just did our call to order and roll call. The agenda review we're going through right now. In a moment, we'll have an opportunity for public comment. And after that, I'm told that staff will provide us a brief presentation, just some reminders of different aspects of this process. So we'll go ahead and hear from them. And then after that, we'll go ahead and do the initial project summaries from local public transportation service providers, LTD and LCOG. And again, we have a large number of presentations. Our goal will be to make it through tonight, hearing from everybody, but there is a chance with the amount of information that we may need to carry some of those over to the next meeting, but we do have that built into our overall schedule, so that should be fine. Spoke to staff ahead of time, and our goal just in terms of facilitation to get through the presentations will be we'll hear from each presenter, but some presenters will present on numerous tasks that are proposed in the packet. And then once we hear from the breadth of all of the tasks per speaker, we'll pause, ask for questions at that point, and then we'll move on to the next speaker and so on. So be prepared for that. And then after we go through all that, at the very last, we'll talk through next and future meeting agendas, and then we'll adjourn, hopefully right at 6:30 p.m. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to staff for an initial presentation. Or actually, I'm sorry, public comment. Open the
Mr. Chair, I would like to note that I missed the roll call, but Phil Barnhart is here.
Want to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment. And now I will hand it over to staff for their presentation.
Sorry, I don't want to take a lot of time tonight with background material because we have a lot of presentations to get through, but I just wanted to do a quick refresher on the formula funds. If I could have the next slide, please, Brianna. So you'll remember that last time we spent the whole session talking about the STIF discretionary and the statewide transit network program grants. That's in the past now, and tonight we're going to move on to the STIF formula funds, which, as I said before, make up 90% of the STIF program. If I could have the next, thanks. So ODOT has given us estimates for how much STIF formula monies will be available in the coming biennium for us here in Lane County. As you can see, there's a bit over $8 million each year of the biennium, adding up to a total of 16.8 million over the 2 years. We've looked at this timeline before, just to give a sense of how we're progressing. We're pretty much right in the middle of it. We've gotten past the October 18th deadline when public transportation service providers had to submit applications for formula funds to LTD. And we're now going into the next 2 months where this committee will be reviewing those projects and making recommendations to the LTD Board of Directors. Our hope is that the Board of Directors can approve the plan at their December 18th meeting, because we have a January 16th deadline to get the application in. But if we have to, we can go into early January for that. So what's your role here? To review the formula fund projects that we're going to be going through tonight, and to provide a recommendation to the LTD board about whether they should approve the STIF formula plan. There are a lot of criteria and a lot of factors for you all to take into consideration when you're reviewing these projects. You'll get a much better ability to read them on page 5 and 6 of your packet. We're not going to talk a lot about those tonight because we have so many presentations to get through, but our next meeting, Kate and I will go into more depth about those factors and what types of things you'll need to take into consideration. I just wanted to give you a sense of our initial STIF budget based on the various projects that have been proposed to date. This is not just subject to change, it's going to change. But I wanted to walk you through briefly so you have some sense of where these funds are coming from. We've got the ODOT estimated funds, which is what I showed you a couple of slides ago. You're probably wondering what that recommended 20% increase is. ODOT suggests that we budget up to 20% over what they're estimating, because there's a possibility that more funds will come in than they're anticipating. So they suggest that we build in a 20% contingency fund for that. And then also the LTD estimated carryover. What's that? That is LTD. Those are STIF funds that have been awarded to LTD in the past that LTD has not yet spent. So we're allowed to carry them over into the next biennium and use them then if we'd like to. That gets, thanks, Brianna. That gets us to our total anticipated STIF formula funds. And you'll see we have a total of a little over 37 million. What our total ask at this point for the 2-year period is over 41 million. So we're coming up about 4.6 million short. This budget will change for a number of reasons in the next month. Part of it will have to do with those STIF discretionary grants. We'll get the word on whether those have been awarded or not, and that will make some difference in various funding scenarios. And then LTD internally will also be looking at their projects and deciding where things can be scaled back a little bit. And with that, I think we're ready to start our presentations, unless folks have questions they'd like me to answer first.
Anybody have a question for Kathleen? All right. Well, in the interest of time, thank you, Kathleen, for that. We will go ahead and dive into the tasks. It looks like we have John up first, presenting on tasks 1 through 12.
And LTD folks, I don't know if it's easier if you all want to come up and sit at the same time or whatever works best.
Sure. And can I confirm, is it just one committee member online? Is that right, Phil Barnhart? Yeah, okay, great.
All right, so thank you to members of the advisory committee. I'm going to be taking us through the first of 12 tasks on our STIF plan. So I'll go through at a pretty brisk pace here, but feel free to tell me to slow down, or if you have questions, I'd be happy to take time for those. These are the what are known as the population-based funding portion, prior to STIF, these were the STF funded projects that LTD has had. So these have been ongoing since prior to the inception of STIF as a program. So the programs themselves are not going to be anything new, but I'll make sure to point out anything that may have evolved or changed more recently. But for the most part, these are projects that you will likely be familiar with to some degree and have been a part of LTD services for many years. So task one is ADA paratransit and associated shopper shuttle. That's our ride source service. You are likely familiar with seeing these vehicles travel throughout town. This is required and mandatory service that is complementary paratransit to our fixed route service. So essentially, as a requirement of receiving federal funds, we must travel within 3/4 of a mile of where our fixed route buses go to be able to provide paratransit services for people with disabilities to ensure there is equitable access to public transportation. So here locally, that's called Ride Source. And then in addition, we include in there the shopper shuttle service, which is an additional component of Ride Source paratransit, where we take groups of typically older adults on shopping excursions and provide additional help and support with shopping trips, which are social outings. So this is going to be the largest portion of the request that you'll see in the population-based funding portion because it's very expensive to operate. This is a origin to destination service, meaning that we pick people up right where they're at. We'll go right to their home. We'll take people exactly to where they need to go. We charge $3.50 in fare, and you might imagine that it is considerably more expensive for us to be able to operate it. So this winds up making up a big portion of the difference. This is required service. So again, if we're not able to subsidize this using grant funds, other types of funding, we must rely on general funds to be able to support the service. So RideSource typically provides well over 100,000 trips a year to our community. It's a very large service, which also includes a call center at 2nd and Garfield, which handles a high volume of calls and requests for transportation. We've also recently added an online scheduling option for folks to be able to use computers or their phone to be able to help manage and schedule their trips. We've also added a notification system, so for folks who want reminders that their trip is either approaching or scheduled or reserved or canceled, that's all can be sent over text, email, or phone calls. Moving on, our second task is preventive maintenance for our specialized services fleet. So I talked a bit about our paratransit service and shopper shuttle. We also need to make sure that we are using resources to keep those vehicles in good working order. So preventive maintenance is the way that we're able to make that happen. This is actually provided as match for federal 5310 funds that LTD receives. This maintains a vehicle fleet of approximately 67 vehicles. That number is a moving target based on as new vehicles are incorporated in the fleet. And this supports Ride Source services, Shopper Shuttle, our South Lane services, Diamond Express, Roadie Express, basically our non-fixed route services that where LTD owns the vehicles. So we allocate a portion to support those on a per year basis, and we account for inflation and increasing costs every year. Typically, it's also a bit more expensive to maintain an older vehicle fleet than a newer one. So we're working to make sure that we're evening that out over time. The next task we have is volunteer mileage reimbursement. This is also a match for both federal 5310 funds that we receive and local match, meaning the value of labor of personnel that support the services from senior and disability services. So we work closely with senior and disability services staff to be able to provide volunteers to provide transportation services in areas in which there is no public transportation option. So for their clients, if they are particularly in rural areas and they're able to find volunteers that can transport them to vital services, we'll provide the gas mileage reimbursement costs to be able to support that. Our fourth task, behavioral health transportation. We currently partner with Whitebird Clinic to be able to provide these trips. These are for individuals who are on their way to behavioral health appointments or receiving care for behavioral health disabilities, in particular that may not be appropriate to use our fixed route transportation to be able to transport for. So these are, again, you're going to hear this quite a bit, match for federal $5310 that we receive. So being able to match these types of funds allows us to stretch these dollars further. So a requirement of us receiving the majority of our federal dollars is that we're able to provide some sort of match at a local or state level to be able to show that we're essentially able to pool resources, which is exactly what we're doing in the model that LTD's had since its inception. On behavioral health transportation, that's roughly about 4,000 trips or over 4,000 trips per year that we're able to offer. Our next task is called Crucial Connections. And again, this is matching federal $5310. These are trips that are provided as gap services when no other transportation program exists and there is an exigent need. So an example would be someone has an important surgery, a life-saving procedure that they need to be able to get assistance for, and they don't live near a connection to public transit and there's no other option. They don't have a friend or family member who's able to transport them. There's not a volunteer that's able to take them. We'll work closely with Senior and Disability Services staff to identify a trip as being flagged for our Crucial Connections program, where we're able to, at a one-time per review basis in conjunction with Senior and Disability staff, authorize a trip to be able to meet that needed function, which essentially buys someone time to be able to find out how they're going to be able to better meet their transportation needs on an ongoing basis. So this isn't intended to be long-term support. It's meant to provide a one-time exigent transportation need while somebody is able to work with developing a network, whether it's through friends or family members or a local nonprofit, to be able to handle what will almost certainly be ongoing transportation needs. So if someone's used to being able to travel independently and suddenly, due to, say, a medical condition, unable to transport themselves, it can be a pretty abrupt situation. And so we're able to just get someone over to the point where they're able to be more independent. Oftentimes, just one trip can make a huge difference in someone's life. And so we've done that. It's a very small program, but one that makes a big difference in people's lives. Similar to that is our Veterans Transportation Program, the sixth task on the list. This is entirely intended to use STIF formula dollars, which a very similar program to our Crucial Connections, but specifically targeted towards those who are identified as veterans. So that'd be to receive similar types of care, but for individuals who have served the country in that way. The next task that we have on our list is our South Lane operations. This is STIF formula funds, which matches against federal $5311, which serves rural communities with 50,000 or fewer population. The intention of these funds is to provide mobility on demand services throughout the Cottage Grove city limits. Currently, there are two services in the area which essentially compete with one another. There's both a mobility on demand program and then also a scheduled service, which operate very similar hours and types of service. Our intention would be to consolidate those into the MOD program, to have additional vehicles that we would essentially move from the scheduled service to the MOD to reduce wait times and make that a more attractive option and make it less complicated and less confusing for members of the public. So we would consolidate these two services down to one, essentially taking the extra capacity to make it a stronger program. In addition, you'll be hearing from us later about a rural transportation pilot that we would support in South Lane and elsewhere using a combination of STIF formula discretionary dollars. The next task we have on our list, task 8, is for travel training. This is for individuals who may need additional assistance in learning how to ride our system. So that's going to be different based on the functional needs of an individual. And we'll do individual assessments, which you'll hear about shortly, to be able to determine what someone's needs are. It could be individuals who need to learn how to pay fare, how to let the operator know where their stop is. Due to the nature of their disability, they may need stranger danger awareness skills. It can be a variety of different resources, how to have their mobility device secured while on the bus, how to do trip planning, what kind of resources are available. We customize a training program based on individual needs. We currently work with the nonprofit alternative work concepts to provide these services, and we would match, again, federal $5310 to be able to continue ongoing support of this program. So oftentimes that makes the difference between someone being able to travel independently on our fixed route system or being entirely reliant on, say, paratransit. So that winds up being a more expensive cost to LTD, but more importantly, by promoting independence on our fixed route system, and it lets people have more control over their transportation options. So it's a win for everyone. By investing a little bit in travel training, it both saves in overall transportation costs and helps us have a stronger transportation system, but it creates more independence for people with disabilities. The next task on our list is our transit host program. Again, we partner currently with Alternative Work Concepts to be able to provide this service. There is a change here in that we currently offer this through our Eugene station. And this has individuals who are able to work at Eugene station to assist with answering questions and, most importantly, assisting with scheduled transfers between fixed route buses at Eugene station. So one of the most tricky part of navigating our fixed route system for many people with disabilities is Eugene Station. There's so many different buses. There's a lot of noise. Buses are going in each direction. There's a lot of different bays, different routes to have to navigate. And if we can assist someone with their transfer going between one bus and another, that makes that difference between being able to ride independently and not. And so we allow people to schedule those trips with us. And in return, we're also able to make sure they're able to get where they need to go safely. So if someone winds up having a scheduled transfer and they're missing or they're not there, we'll have emergency contact information that we can get in touch with and say, hey, John was scheduled to be here at 10 o'clock. I noticed he wasn't on his bus for our handoff. Did he just forget to cancel? Was he out sick today, or do we need to go looking? And so if someone got off at a stop early, then we can go scoop them up. So it helps both family members or say a group home ensure that someone's being well looked after while they're on our system, and again, to be able to ride independently. Our next task, and that is also matching Section 5310 funds. And what I wanted to make sure to point out what was new is we added additional funds in our proposal to include Springfield Station for future services. So currently this is only offered at Eugene Station. More and more we're seeing Springfield Station used for transfers and could make use of this service there as well. Next, we have on our list Task 10, Transportation Eligibility Assessments. So when someone feels that they may want to use RideSource Paratransit as a service or just want to know more, we'll actually send someone out to their home to do a functional ability assessment. So that's making sure, is someone able to physically get to a bus stop? Are there any barriers due to, say, a cognitive disability or behavioral health disability? And based on that assessment, we will determine whether or not someone is allowed to ride, say, our paratransit service and under what conditions. So that we work with experts and currently at Senior and Disability Services, Whitebird Clinic, and Alternative Work Concepts all together, each with their own expertise that we're able to deploy in specific situations to assist in those assessments. That's using a combination of STIF funds matching federal $5310 once again. Next, Task 11, our Florence Rhody Express. This has been recently expanded, so this is an increase from prior bienniums, but consistent with what we've been currently spending in the current biennium to double roughly the frequency of trips on the Rhody Express in Florence. We have almost immediately seen double the ridership, and it continues to increase. So it's been wildly successful in that we've just seen kind of immediate turnaround in that it's as we increase frequency, there's been that demand within the community. So that's been great to see. So those are now called the Florence Blue, Rodeo Express Blue and Rodeo Express Green lines in Florence. They currently have their main stop and intersection at the grocery outlet along Highway 101. This matches, you may remember this from South Lane, federal $5311, which are used in rural communities less than 50,000 people. And we also receive a local match through the City of Florence. So City of Florence themselves contributes dollars to this program to help support it. So combined with those and the STIF formula funds, we're able to operate the Rodeo Express. And then the last task as part of the STIF population-based program is the Oak Ridge Diamond Express. I'll just note the Florence service has been doing about 6,000 trips per year. Oak Ridge Diamond Express currently doing about 7,000 trips per year. Those are increasing, both of them. Diamond Express service currently offers 4 weekday trips and limited Saturday service over to Oak Ridge, matching 5311 F and STIF discretionary dollars, as well as local match provided from City of Oak Ridge. So similar to City of Florence, rural communities that are outside of our area have been contributing funds to be able to help support the match required for federal funds for these services. Again, these are very similar to the asks that we've done for prior bienniums, except where I've noted there's no brand new programs, just some small changes to existing programs, as I've mentioned, but that concludes the population-based formula program portion of our STIF formula plan.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Let's open it up for questions. To John for tasks 1 through 12, if anybody has a question. Josh.
When you refer to the STIF population base, that's the funds that were formerly STF funds?
Correct. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, without further questions, thank you, John. I think we'll hear from you again here shortly. We will move over to Dave for tasks 13 and 14, please.
Hi there, Dave Roth, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy. So I think we're going to be bouncing around a little bit with different staff people for the remainder of the presentation, but I'm going to cover the next two, 13 and 14, which are service increase and then a mobility on demand pilot project. So service increase dollars within the STIF formula fund plan are designed to go towards just that, service increases. And we've included $8 million in the upcoming biennium, which is the same amount that we included in the current biennium. I should note that this is one of the sources of unspent dollars that you've heard about because we have been unable to spend those dollars from the current biennium up until now, largely because of, or solely because of our operator shortage. And so now that we've been able to bring more operators on, we are actually in a position to be able to start spending some of those dollars on service increases. So like I said, we're including the same amount, $8 million over the course of the 2 years, upcoming 2 years. And in terms of outcome measures, you'll see it in your packet here reflected in revenue miles or revenue hours. So we're suggesting up to about 500,000 revenue miles or about 40,000 revenue hours. And we also think about it in terms of operator counts. And so we're anticipating, just on the basis of where we've been over the last year in terms of bringing operators on, around 35 new operators, I think is what we can anticipate the likely outcome being. So that's the service increase portion for this upcoming biennium. Maybe one more thing to mention here is that just starting at the beginning of September, we did increase our service 8% across the board, getting MX back to 10-minute headways. And then all of our core routes across the system have a minimum 30-minute frequency. So that's been a significant change for us over the last few years, and we're seeing a response in ridership. So increasing frequency, we're seeing ridership increase as well. And then just in terms of how we allocate that service, so it's guided by our service policy, which suggests increasing service in this order: weekday span and frequency, Saturday span and frequency, and then Sunday span and frequency. So that's the order in which we apply service increases. And then just last month, the board approved our system review final plan, which gives us very specific guidance in how we allocate service increases. So we feel like we're really well positioned as long as we can bring more operators on board and continuing to deliver service. And we have a great plan for how we'll do that. So then the next one that I'll be covering is Task 14, the Mobility on Demand pilot. So this is another carryover from the previous biennium. And this one allocates dollars, a total of $700,000, according to the draft plan right now, over the biennium to allow us to support one additional mobility on demand pilot project within Lane County. I should note that I have an asterisk next to this one, as well as another task, the task 17, which I'll present in a moment. These are two areas that are subject to change, as we heard already from Kathleen, based off of our recent award of the Attain grant. So we were just awarded funding to develop a fairly large-scale pilot, and likely this will allow us to reduce these amounts and put our resources towards that new federal grant. So I'll stop there.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Dave. Let's open it up to questions on task 13 and 14, if the committee has any. Yeah, Carrie.
Just curious on the mobility on demand pilot, is that to be determined location, or is that thinking of a specific area of the service?
Yeah, great question. So this is more of a to be determined, and it leaves us flexibility to go wherever it's most needed and most viable.
Josh, question.
Just a quick one. So you mentioned that you did an 8% service increase in September. This stiff ask, roughly what percent increase would that look like?
Percent wise, I don't have the exact percentage. It would be more significant than that.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard to take revenue miles and put it into service.
I can come back to the next meeting with that information.
That's
That'd be helpful.
Thank you.
And so I guess my question related to that, that would be a percent increase beyond the 8% that you just recently increased. Is that correct?
These are cumulative.
Yeah, cumulative. Okay.
Yeah.
And then related to service increases, first, I just wanted to say thank you to LTD. I know the University of Oregon has really felt the reduction in recent years of service to our students and staff and faculty, and to know that it's increasing again is wonderful news. Thank you. And it sounds like a lot of this is for frequency, and maybe I missed it, but could you explain if there's any coverage changes with this, or is it all focused on frequency?
I would speak to that question in terms of our just adopted system review final plan, and it does increase some coverage, not really in the university area specifically, but more out in West Eugene, being responsive to new multifamily housing that's being developed out in that area. So West Eugene, a little bit in Bethel area, are where some of the coverage changes.
Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, question back here. Oh. On the screen. Okay, sorry.
It's Phil. Can you hear me?
I'm having trouble reading that. Oh, it's Phil. Okay.
Can you hear me?
You didn't.
Yeah, we can't, Phil, we can't hear you, but.
Okay, well then, I don't know what to do
Are
because
you able to unmute?
I am unmuted.
It's just be ours. Oh, okay. Let's see. Can LTD staff access his questions? Okay.
Philip, can you try to speak again?
Yes, is that any better?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, so it was on your end. All right, I think you've answered this question, but I'm not sure. The service increase of $8 million, is that in addition to the money you were unable to spend earlier because you didn't have enough drivers, or is it partly or entirely the same number, the same dollars as what you had available before? That was not clear to me.
Basically the same because we have the taxes.
Yeah, I don't know if you could hear the response from our finance director, but yeah, you could consider this the same dollars because it would be carryover dollars. So essentially the same unspent money going towards service increases for this biennium.
Right, and this may not be the right time to ask, but I am wondering what the issue was with acquiring adequate staff, and that may be too complex a question to answer today.
I mean, I don't know if anybody else wants to step in from LTD, but it's been an ongoing issue, not just for LTD, but for other trans agencies, as well as just the workforce more broadly. Finding skilled workers for these jobs is an issue across industries, and so no different for LTD.
Thank you. One addition to that is I think even prior to that challenge, we faced a workforce that was reaching retirement age and needing to backfill. So even as we've been quickly trying to hire, we're also facing some attrition at the same time.
So it's the baby boomers retirement problem that everyone is faced with. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Great questions. Any other questions before we move to task 15? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move to task 15. I think, Eric, are you presenting for us?
Yes, I am. My name is Eric Bridenstine. I'm the Director of Marketing here at LTD. I have just one project to talk about this evening, and that's our K-12 Student Pass program. So this pass provides free transit pass access to all K-12 students in Linn County. That includes public, private, charter, and homeschool students. It has a particular focus on the high school demographic. Eugene, 4J, Springfield, and Bethel students depend on these passes to trips to and from school, after school activities, employment, and other mobility and transit needs. So these funds support expenses for fare, tap cards, and marketing and outreach efforts to support adoption and utilization of those transit passes.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee on that? Yes, Kelly.
The description, thank you. The description mentions that it's passes for students inside and outside of the district service area. What is the range of district area outside that students are getting these passes?
Yeah, because I think you're ready to answer. So
yeah, I am. So actually everywhere LTD's fixed route operates. So for instance, Junction City, Cottage Grove, all of the communities around the metro area, those schools as well can participate and do participate in the program. Thanks for asking.
Carrie, question.
This may not be the right time to ask the question, but do the school districts contribute to this PASS program at all, since they're not running school buses and letting kids ride LTE buses to get to school?
As far as I know, there's not a financial contribution. There is some support involved as a collaborative effort with school district staff that work hand in hand with us to encourage adoption and utilization of the passes.
Cool. Great. Other questions? I'll just add my comment. I think this is such an incredible service to the community, and I anecdotally know of many families who take advantage of this, and it also for high schoolers helps reduce drive alone trips. So thank you. Yeah. So let's keep moving. In the interest of time, we'll move down back over to John for task 16, please.
Okay, so our low income fare program, I think we all want to make sure that we can get fare in the hands of our low income residents who need it the most. LTD is not actually well positioned to be able to do that. So if someone comes to us and requests a day pass, we're not able to easily tell by looking at someone what their income rate is. There's not a great way for us to be able to determine that in the moment. So we actually partner with local nonprofits through our nonprofit pass program. To be able to do some of that work together in partnership. We have many nonprofits that we're currently working with. I'll just name a few: St. Vincent de Paul, HIV Alliance, Emergence, Food for Lane County, Shelter Care, Relief Nursery, Peace Health, Looking Glass, Head Start, Pearl Buck, many more. These are the folks who are in the best position to determine who needs these passes the most. So we'll work out through agreement that will help subsidize these passes, and then local nonprofits will make the determination on who needs them the most.
Great. Thank you, John. Do we have any questions or comments for John? All right. Well, let's keep moving. I think we're back over to you, Dave.
All right, so task 17 is the trip planning mobile app. And this item, it would create a mobile application that enables customers to plan a trip in the Eugene-Springfield area using a variety of transportation modes. So I should note that this is also a carryover from our last plan. And this is another one where I will put an asterisk next to the item. This particular item very well could likely be removed from our plan because we were awarded the Attain grant. Again, this is new news for us. We were just received the announcement a week and a half ago after this was put together. So anyhow, the Attain grant, which I'll talk a little bit more later about, includes a trip planning app, and so we do not need a standalone item for a trip planner.
Great.
So that's that one.
Excellent.
Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Dave? All right, hearing none, we will keep moving down the list over to Eric Evers. Hi, Eric.
Hello, I'm Eric Evers. I'm the Director of Fleet Management. The next three tasks are mine. The first one is the Specialized Services Fleet, and that encompasses several different vehicles. From Specialized Services, there's 14 medium-duty cutaway buses. These are all, this one and the next two tasks are all replacement vehicles due to end of life or beyond useful life. 14 medium-duty cutaways, as well as a couple modified minivans. And those are for in-district, meaning our ride source service, as well as South Lane wheels out of service as well, out of district service as well. And one shopper shuttle replacement vehicle.
Great. All right. Any questions for Eric from the committee? One quick question I have is Oh, go ahead, Phil.
Oh, no, that's fine. The question I had is, how is it going toward electrifying these kinds of vehicles as you replace them?
Yeah, this is the, maybe John will help me when I come up a little short possibly. We discussed this the last meeting, but not quickly. A few things. There's some infrastructure that needs to be put in place, especially at our ride source facility for charge infrastructure. There's also initial cost for these vehicles. These are not manufactured as electric vehicles off the manufacturer floor. These have to be built and then go somewhere else to create it a true EV cutaway vehicle. We are doing some exploratory work with some transit vans in this lane to see how the transit van works for the service, especially ride source specifically. If those work well, which our hope is that they do, They do build the transit van right off the factory floor as an electric vehicle. And at that time, 2 to 3 years from now, we should have charge infrastructure, at least at Ride Source and on property here at Glenwood, to support that.
Great.
I'm glad we're making progress.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you. Good question. Any other questions for this one? If not, we'll keep moving. Thank you, Eric.
Yes, sir.
We're going to move back to Dave, and he will cover tasks 21 through 24, I believe.
Sorry, Eric, did you want to cover?
I think we skipped a
Oh,
couple.
did we skip? Oh, I'm
probably
sorry.
felt like I jumped around a bit, but that covers several specialized service vehicles across
Okay.
different services. The next one is task 19, which is our Ride Source Shopper Shuttle expansion vehicle. And that is just what it says. The service has gone pretty well, and there's a need for an additional vehicle there. And this is to support that purchase.
Okay, and then Eric, if you want to present task 20 as well, then we'll call for questions at
Yes.
the end there.
And the next one, task 20, is for fixed route vehicle replacement, which is, I believe, just the match for this, but this includes 16 40-foot transit buses for replacement, as I discussed before, as well as 5 60-foot articulating buses for replacement as well.
Any questions for Eric? Yeah, Carrie.
Are these just replacement vehicles to replace ones that you're retiring, or do these new vehicles, do you need them to expand the service that we were also hearing about?
Yeah, good question. These right now are just replacement vehicles for end of useful life for vehicles we have now.
Okay, so did the replacement or the expanded service require any more vehicles, or is that funding not looking at additional vehicles for that?
Eric's probably in a better position to answer this than I am, but I believe that we have sufficient vehicles or a plan in place for sufficient vehicles to deliver the expanded service.
Yeah, I think due to the fact that we're not at the service we were pre-COVID, we have the vehicles, but I haven't been addressed to say we need to expand the fleet yet. So these are just replacement vehicles. Yes, ma'am.
I had a quick question. We talked about the future electrification of fleet vehicles, and I'm just curious, with so many replacement vehicles, is the industry moving more towards hybrid vehicles as kind of that interim step? And if so, are we able to take advantage of that?
Yeah, the district in conjunction with an external agency did a study, fleet replacement study. I think we completed it 2 years ago now, which concluded on what the best propulsion type for replacement at this point with what's available in the industry. Battery electrics did not land high for all kinds of reasons. Range of the vehicle, lifetime cost of the vehicle, which includes purchase costs and then just maintenance costs of the vehicle, didn't land well. Hybrids didn't land well either. Many would say that the future propulsion type that might be the most successful is hydrogen fuel cell, which is out there. It's not out to the point that it's proven, and we should sink our money right into it. But there's also comes with that as a facilities and infrastructure cost, which is significant. So hydrogen storage facility, and then how do you ship that and consider the greenhouse gas effect of hauling that here with a diesel-driven truck. So we're not there yet. I mean, we continue annually to look at what the next propulsion type is or what's best for the district. But for now, we consider putting service on the road is more valuable right now than what type of propulsion it is. Getting people in buses versus in their cars.
Right, great. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
A good additional context. Any other?
Could I make?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Could I make a quick comment? I am extremely pleased that you're paying careful attention to costs and practicality. I am not an expert on any of these things, but no one has yet been able to demonstrate that hydrogen is ever going to be able to compete with battery electric, simply because for a whole bunch of reasons, which I'm sure you already know. So the fact that you're paying careful attention to costs and practicality, I think is very, very important. I think it would be a huge mistake for Lane Transit District or any transit district to go into the hydrogen business.
Yes, sir. We will continue to look at all of our options before we step in a different direction.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you.
We're going to now shift back to Dave Roth.
All right, so I'll be covering tasks 21 through 24 this time around. The first one on the list is task 21. This one is called Transit Shared Mobility System Integration and Modernization. And really what this boils down to is LTD making a significant capital investment in the bike share shared mobility system within the Eugene Springfield area. This would be a capital investment to replace the aging bike share fleet that's being used in Eugene and Springfield with a mixed fleet of electric, so pedal electric and non-electric normal bicycles that would be deployed with in-dock charging stations throughout Eugene Springfield. So this project proposal is in line with LTD's approach to mobility, thinking more broadly and from a systems perspective. So making an investment like this allows us to become better integrated between the fixed route bus system and these shared mobility modes like bike share. And you can think of integration sort of on a spectrum where we might start with sort of the marketing and branding piece early on. And then as we get further into it, we'd be talking about fare payment, trip planning integration, potentially pay once, and you'd be able to use a bike share bike for your first mile connection and then your transit ride after that. So a lot of opportunities on the horizon with this one. And so if you look at the biennium plan here, it's proposing $500,000 in 2026 and then 2.5 million in 2027. And the 2.5 million would go towards the capital cost of making this purchase. And LTD is working very closely with Cascadia Mobility, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, and the collective of the Shared Mobility Work Group right now on this proposal. Task 22 is it was a new project proposal. This one is called the Transit Access and Safety Improvement Program. And this one is a new program proposal that would set aside a pot of money totaling of $500,000 across the next biennium. And this would allow roadway owners to approach LTD and request funding that could supplement existing planned roadway projects. So for example, if a road was being repaved and there was transit stops on that segment of road, and the city or roadway owner needed a little bit of extra funding to make transit stop improvements or an improved pedestrian crosswalk, lighting improvements, those sorts of safety amenities that would improve access to transit, those cities would be able to approach us and request funding. So that's what this pot of money would be set up for. Task 23 is the Community Outcome Initiative pilot. And again, this is a new proposal for this biennium. And this program, again, it would set aside a pot of money that would fund innovative mobility pilots designed to improve community outcomes related to housing, education, public health, and workforce development. So if you've been following a lot of the conversations at LTD recently, you know that those are 4 areas that we're keenly interested in improving outcomes, especially tied or linked to mobility. One example of something that this might fund is something that we've seen done up in the Portland metro region, and this is a food delivery pilot program. So a way to provide food options to people who might not be able to otherwise access them through mobility service. And again, this is $500,000 across the 2 years. Task 24 is the Attain project match fund. So I mentioned this earlier that LTD was awarded federal funding through the Department of Transportation for the Attain project. And this is a grant application that LTD submitted last winter, I believe in February of 24, the beginning of the year. And this funds a sort of a 3-component project. And the first component is a new planning software that LTD and our partners at LCOG, that the cities, U of O, can use to plan and game out on-demand mobility services. The second component is the trip planning app, which I mentioned previously. So this would be a white label or gray label trip planning app that would be able to be used across the system to plan shared mobility trips. And then the third component is probably the most important one, is the actual on-demand service. And this service is focused within the boundary of the Bethel School District out in West Eugene, and that includes both rural and urban areas. That's one of the key features of this project, is provide new rural on-demand service and to fill in gaps, particularly for students in the Bethel School District. So students who might not have a great option, mobility option to get to after-school activities, whether it's sports or a job or that sort of thing. And this funding, so we were awarded $5.2 million in federal funding, and then we're seeking $1.3 million in STIF funding, and the total project is what's a little more. It's just under $7 million for this 3-year pilot project.
Great, thank you, Dave. Let's open it up for questions on these tasks to the committee. Any questions or comments for Dave Roth? Josh.
I think it's really exciting that LTD is thinking about some new first last mile projects. And we probably don't have time to get into it for this meeting, but I'd be curious what the guardrails that exist on those programs are to ensure that they are related to transit and it's not just, you know, a sidewalk that nobody can get to a bus stop with is getting built. So I'd be interested to hear more about that at perhaps a future meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a role that both the STIF Advisory Committee as well as LTD Strategic Planning Committee can help inform, is how we develop the criteria for that program. And you're right, it needs to be very specific in terms of setting up criteria so that there are improvements that would go toward transit access. Yeah.
Great. All right. Yes, Kelly.
I had a question on Task 21 as well. Is this primarily to replace existing infrastructure, or is this an expansion of the program to more of a district-wide application?
Replace existing.
The bike share.
Oh, the bike share one.
Yeah.
The bike share one would be system-wide plus. So this creates the opportunity for us to go more broadly than the existing system.
Okay, so more into Springfield and beyond the current little boundary that it's in.
Yeah, I mean, it's we still have a lot of work to do to plan it out, but I think the idea here being that LTD can sort of bring the weight of the organization to this type of program, and we can we very likely could expand it in the future. I think primarily right now we're thinking about numbers that are sort of in the replacement scale right now. So slight increase likely, but mostly replacement of the existing system. And we need to look for additional funding opportunities. I will also say that a goal is to use this as leverage, use STIF funds as leverage potentially for other opportunities that might be out there.
I have a comment as well on Task 21. So this is mostly for the capital investment, or all for the capital investment, replacing the bikes that we talked about. I think Kelly, to your question, I mean, I've been in some of these regional mobility working group meetings, and Cascadia Mobility, they operate the program. And so this would be upgrading the bikes to new ones. But I think in terms of system expansion, Cascadia Mobility would need to think through how do they operate a broader program outside of the existing service area. But my other comment on this one is I'm just so pleased to see LTD stepping up and moving into this realm. I feel like it's very forward-thinking, transitioning, traditional thought of just large buses, but that a transit agency is also working with community partners for bike share because it is all integrated. And at the end of the day, we want it to feel like a smooth, seamless experience for riders. So thank you for that. Any other questions for Dave on these tasks before we move back to John for tasks 25 through 27? All right. Thank you, Dave. We'll hand it back to you, John.
Certainly. The next three tasks are going to sound very familiar because we were recently before this group for the STIF discretionary portion of these three tasks. I'll very briskly go through them. This is going to be for the STIF formula match portion should those discretionary funds be awarded. So first, we've got our rural on-demand pilot match. So this would be taking an existing pilot program and reinventing it to be able to serve more areas throughout Lane County. So currently we have a scheduled origin to destination service in South Lane County. We don't have much that is able to serve rural West Lane County, East Lane County, North Lane County. So we would look to our shopper shuttle as a model where we can divide the number of days that it's available to go more places. So it means that residents would need to be more strategic about the days that they schedule their trips, but we'd be able to serve currently either underserved or unserved areas. The next is our Florence Mobility Hub. So we've already talked a little bit today about the grocery outlet on 101, and you've heard plenty about that previously. It's just a little spot in the road where we park buses. And so having a more strategic area where we're able to make connections and transfers would be helpful. And this would be the planning to support a shovel-ready project that we would explore in the future. So just the planning for that. And then finally, match for a replacement shopper shuttle vehicle using discretionary funds.
Great, thank you. Let's open it up for questions, comments. Yes, Carrie.
So what happens if any of these don't get STIF discretionary funds?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer to that. They can still be listed as STIF formula fund projects, but these are the match portion. The STIF discretionary funds themselves would be intended to do the heavy lifting. So the projects themselves would not be supported by just the amounts listed in the STIF formula plan.
Josh.
This might actually be a question for Kathleen, but you mentioned that we would know before our process is done about the discretionary awards.
We should know in early December. We're hoping to know around December 2nd.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Josh, you have another?
Sorry, task 25, is that related to task 7 with the mobility on demand within Cottage Grove, or those two separate things?
That's a good question. So in our current biennium, those are blurred together. There's more separation in the upcoming biennium. So we would look to a rural on-demand pilot funded primarily with STIF discretionary funds that would go more places than just South Lane County. So the task 7 is primarily intended to support mobility on demand services that are within the city of Cottage Grove itself, and a rural demand pilot would be for areas outside of the city limits.
I have a quick question related to the task 26 mobility hub. I find it really intriguing, the mobility hub concept, and wondering if LTD, if you guys have thought through yet what types of modes other than transit and regular automobiles might be a part of that concept, or is that to be determined?
That's a great question, and I think that would be part of the planning process itself, but that certainly has been part of the conversation. So there's many different modes that would benefit from a transit hub, particularly for folks being able to either switch or interline between different types of transportation. So that can include things like bike share, TNCs, scooter share, other modes of transit. So I think those would all, I'm sure, be part of the planning process. And this would just be, currently we'd be at the earliest stages where it's pre-conceptual, but that would be part of the idea of what would be discussed over the next 2 years should that funding be awarded.
Great, exciting, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this batch? No? All right, if not, let's keep moving. I think we're going back to Dave with tasks 28 through 30.
Hi again. So yes, tasks 28 through 30 are some additional match projects. So the first one here is task 28, and that is the Eugene Safe Streets and Roads for All match. And if people are not aware, the City of Eugene applied for and was awarded federal funding for a Safe Streets and Roads for All project. And it's a transit-focused project. In fact, I believe the scope of the project is to develop an access to transit priority project list for the City of Eugene using AI drone work. So it'll be really interesting to see this project get moving. I've not been involved in an AI drone project before. Anyhow, because of the transit focus of the project, Eugene requested that we provide the local match requirement for the project, which is $80,000 identified for the first year of our upcoming biennium plan. I should just mention on this program, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is it's a great grant program that allows cities and agencies to go after planning dollars and then follow up with capital dollar requests. So the nice thing about this program is that if Eugene does go back for a follow-up grant, they'll have a project list ready to go to start implementing capital projects. Just FYI. The next one is task 29, and this is the fair management match. So we have a planned project within our community investment plan, our CIP, for a fair management study and then follow-up capital project. And if you're familiar with the UMO app on your phone, you get a little QR code that you can call up to pay your fare or use your pass. I know that's what the U of O students, I think, typically use. We also have a touch pass, and that's what we use today. But in the future, we'll be looking for other options, other features, and there's a lot of changes in the industry right now in this area. And so anyhow, we have a project in our community investment plan, and we're looking for STIF dollars to match that work using federal funding. So that'll be a big undertaking of the agency over the next couple of years. Let's see, and then task 30 is the downtown and riverfront circulator discretionary match. So the City of Eugene submitted a discretionary request for funding to support a new downtown circulator service that would connect the riverfront to greater downtown. And this is something that LTD and the city have been partnering on for some time. Their STIF discretionary ask over the biennium was about $1 million. And then the STIF formula match request comes out at $100,000 over the biennium. And I should just mention that this is ongoing work. If for some reason the City of Eugene is not awarded this funding, we have committed to still maintaining this partnership around this concept. And what we would likely do is potentially reconfigure some of our existing, one of our existing downtown routes to better serve the riverfront area with this project. So that's all for these three.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Dave? All right. Well, let's keep moving forward. Thank you, Dave, for that. And we're welcoming Pam, welcome, to speak about tasks 31 through 33.
Thank you. I'm Pam Stratz, the Director of Finance here at LTD. And I'll start with task 31, our Sustainable Services Reserve. So in February of 2022, the LTD board adopted a budgetary reserve policy that included establishing a reserve for our STIF programs. The reserve can only be used to maintain consistent, reliable, statewide transportation improvement funded services. The reserve was targeted to be between 2 and 6 months of annual operating costs for our STIF programs and services. We currently have $670,000 in reserve, with another $585,000 to be transferred in this current biennium. We're proposing $505,708 in reserves for the next biennium. With this amount, we'll have approximately 3 months of operating expenses for the services in our current STIF plan. I'd like to point out that the reserve is not used to maintain capital assets that are purchased with our STIF funds. It is specifically to maintain services in the event of unexpected revenue shortfalls, allow us to be able to either continue the services or at a minimum at least be able to give them a soft landing. So let me continue on.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. Task 32 is STIF administration. Our request of $800,000 for STIF administration will fund 75% of a position at LTD to manage and provide outreach for our school fair program. As mentioned earlier, our school fair program is very popular with our school districts, but as we all know, they are also strapped for funding. And I noticed it just in the 4 years that I've been here, there has been a decline in their ability to be able to assist with managing and also the outreach for these plans. So we would like to, they've asked us specifically to take that on. We weren't able to do that at a level that we really wanted to. And so we want to be sure that we have funding in our STIF plan to be able to take care of that and make sure that it's utilized. This amount will also fund 75% of a position at LTD to manage and provide support for the programs and services provided by STIF. Currently, this work has been split between the finance department and the mobility services department, and we feel it'll be more efficient to have this consolidated into one staff position. And finally, this budget also provides funds for LCOG to assist LTD staff with meeting the ODOT reporting requirements for our STIF funds. LCOG has been a great help to us over the last several years. Thank you, Kate. We feel like it's time that we need to bring some of this internally, but we will still need to depend on them for some of their support. So, okay. And then moving on to the last one, Project A contingency. The target amount for our STIF budget is based on revenue estimates for the state of Oregon and ODOT. In the event that more taxes are collected than estimated, we want to be prepared with enough budget to put those taxes into service. So our proposed contingency of $3,123,242 is meant to provide budget authority for both the possibility of additional revenues, but also in this situation that service costs exceed our estimates in one or more particular areas. But in any situation, we will not spend more than is available to us. And in our receipts, that initial budget that Kathleen showed, and of course is authorized. So.
Great.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up to any questions or comments the committee might have. I have a quick question myself. I was wondering with the carry forward, so to speak, or reserve, does that, if it's not spent, it just keeps rolling over? Is that the case? Or
Yeah, it'll stay there
Okay.
and available. It was included in our overall reserve policy, I think, by our previous director of finance, specifically to make sure that it can only be used for those types of services, and it is written in our policy that way. We also took it out of our general operating funds, and it actually sits in a reserve fund that is defined by the Oregon Department of Revenue. They have a special definition when you're doing budgeting for reserve funds. And so there's also special protections about when funds can be taken out of a reserve fund. It requires a board action, and it has to be for a specific purpose.
Okay,
So
great.
we really want to make sure that they are used for that intent.
Okay, great. That makes sense. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Pam. In the interest of time, let's keep moving forward. I think now we're shifting over to LCOG with Kelly Clark. I believe you're walking us through, 6 tasks, and we have actually 15 minutes. So I'm feeling hopeful we'll be able to do that.
I can get us there.
Is that enough time for you, Kelly?
Oh, plenty. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you,
and
all the
you're-
speakers from LTD. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few slides to talk from. And while it looks like there's six tasks, they're bundled in a way that I'll just present on 3. So the first one that I wanted to share was a task for our Eugene Florence connector route. This is an existing transit route that operates between the city of Eugene and Florence along Highway 126. This service started in March of 2020, right before COVID hit, and it was just stiff funded at that time. It currently operates 7 days per week, except for on federal holidays, with 2 round trips per day. And then with stiff funding, we were able to add a third midday round trip that operates Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. So we were able to expand that service in May of this year. Fares for the one way ticket are $5. And then fare between Mapleton and Florence is $1. And that was in response to Workforce Oregon asking us to help out with people getting into the Florence area from Mapleton. We have a lot of partners that help us make this happen. The Confederated Tribes of Kuzla, Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, who have been a partner all along through the planning for this project to the actual implementation. And they actually loaned us or leased us their bus that's shown here when we operated that for several years, and now have replaced it with, not fully replaced it, but are replacing it with some newer buses. Lane County, who maintains and stores our buses. The City of Florence is a great partner on the west side of our route. Lane Transit District, who's been a part of this all along, and then ODOT, Amtrak, and of course local residents who advocated it from the beginning. We are, let's see here, the ask that we have today for the formula funds will match our STIP discretionary STN program dollar request. So you've heard from me about this project before through the discretionary conversation. And then the next slide will show the route that this service operates. So we go Eugene through, from Eugene Amtrak Station to downtown, Veneta. We stop in Mapleton, the Three Rivers Casino, Old Town Florence, and then stop at the Florence Key Transit Hub, which is an important hub where we see the Rhodey Express, the route from Lincoln County and the route from Coos County all converge here to create a nice, that's what we're talking about, that mobility hub is where that will be, the planning for that. And then next slide, the intent for this slide is to show ridership. This is broken down by quarter and by year. So the green bars show ridership in 2020, blue 2021, yellow 2022, darker green 2023, and then the navy 2024. And we like this graph because it really shows that we're seeing increase in ridership year after year, quarter after quarter, and we also start to see some patterns and seasonality with the ridership. So we're seeing kind of dips in the winter seasons, peaks in the summer seasons, which is kind of encouraging and telling about, we're seeing some tourism, maybe people using the route for more than transport back and forth, but recreational purposes, we see all kinds of riders on this route. People who don't have other transportation options, people who use the route for bicycling, access to the recreational area that it provides. We've even heard anecdotal stories of people carrying surfboards on the buses. So it's been a fun route to hear mixed successes. All the buses are ADA accessible and have bike racks. Okay, the next slide. And then our next task is support for the Florence to Yachats connector. This is a route that operates along Highway 101 between the cities of Florence and Yachats. It's an important connector on the route, the series of routes along Highway 101 all along in Oregon and beyond. This route operates 7 days per week, except for on holidays. We provide 4 routes per day, and they operate between 7:30 and 7:25 p.m. And we were also able to increase the frequency of this route, this stiff biennium, by adding a Sunday service. It's not on this slide here, but it originally operated Monday through Saturday, and we added Sunday service, which is a good increase of service for the folks who are using this. Fares are $2.50 for a one-way ticket, and we have a lot of partners making this happen as well. The City of Florence, Lane County, ODOT, and most importantly, our local residents who have continued to support these routes. Next slide here shows the route service area. So we start in the Florence at that key Florence Transit Hub, have a stop at the Carl G. Washburn State Park, and then in the route in the north part at the Little Log Church and Museum in Florence, and then it returns its route in the same stops. And it connects with the Lincoln Transit bus on the north side, and then at that mobility hub on the south side, future mobility hub. And then the next slide will show us some ridership numbers as well, broken down in the same way, but the intent here is just to show we're seeing pretty continual increases in ridership for this route as well. And similar patterns with kind of lower ridership in the winter times and higher ridership in the summer times. But this service, people using this route, wide range from recreational users to people bringing their bikes between Yachats and Florence. That's kind of a sketchy route of 101, don't want to bike on it. So they'll put their bike on the bus in Yachats and get off in Florence and continue south. The backpacking route along the coast is also kind of a barrier. So people will use the bus for the same purpose. And then just people who don't have another way to get around will use this bus. And then the next slide, I think that's all of my slides, but I did want to mention the last task that LCOG is presenting, and it is for the low-income fare program. And this is in direct response to a lot of service providers who have asked us, do you have these bulk fares that we can buy from you, then to give either buy from you or have, that we can give to our customers who are income limited. And so that's the task for that is would support those fares. And we've actually been recently approached by a few school districts in the West County requesting reduced fares. Transportation barriers transportation is a major barrier for a lot of students. And the LTD student fare doesn't, Link Lane doesn't accept the LTD fares, free fares that students get. And so this would be a similar program where students would get a fare at a reduced rate or a free fare.
Great. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy to take these
Open
questions.
it up for questions or comments from the committee. All right, hearing none. Thank you, Kelly, for that presentation. Good work with the LCOG is doing. And wow, we made it through all of the projects, and we have about 6 minutes to go, I think. Thank you to our presenters for being thorough yet succinct. Greatly appreciated. And I'm going to hand it back to staff here to talk about next and future meeting agendas, and then we'll adjourn.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, where do we go from here? And there are some next steps to follow. For our public transportation service providers, we've got to do that budget revision that we've talked about. So we'll be waiting to hear about the STIF discretionary and STN projects and see whether they are funded or not, and adjust based on those decisions. And then, as Dave mentioned, LTD has some projects that may be getting dropped or funded at a lower level, and we'll need to take a look at some other projects to get us a little closer to our budget. And we'll come back with those changes to you. And then for our next meeting on the 19th, we'd like to go back and talk about some of those criteria that I had listed on an earlier slide, so you can get a sense of what it is that ODOT wants you to be looking at when you're evaluating these projects. And then we can have a discussion of the projects that were presented tonight and any feedback you want to provide on those.
Okay, great. And should we expect some decision-making from our committee on that date or after that?
I think we're going to have to wait till December when we get the outcomes from the STIF discretionary and STN grants.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, Carrie.
Just curious on the decision making, when we were looking at the discretionary funds, we just kind of provided commentary. We didn't have to prioritize. Do you anticipate that we may have to prioritize projects?
Pete, have we prioritized in the past?
We have prioritized in the past. It used to be more of a requirement to prioritize, and it was actually in the STIF plan to list it out. I don't think the STIF plan template requires that anymore. One of the things that we'll bring up that will be a conversation topic is potentially which projects to use with the rollover funds versus the anticipated funds that are coming in, because I think that's the rollover funds are guaranteed. You know, they're kind of already sitting in LTD's bank account. And nothing that ODOT predicts is necessarily a guarantee. So that would potentially be where you could make some recommendations about where, and potentially also ask the providers kind of, you know, like which of these projects are the most important to you as the providers as well too.
Right. Okay. So if that happens at the December meeting, can we get a reminder of when that date is?
December 3rd.
December. Okay.
Okay.
And then we have another meeting scheduled December 10th if we need it.
Okay. Great. Any other questions from the committee? So it looks like we have next meeting just November 19th and December 3rd. And what was the third one you said? December
10th.
10th. Okay, great. All right. Lots coming up, and I know we have the holidays coming up, but really appreciate the committee's time and staff's time, and we'll do our best to stay on schedule. So, all right. Well, without anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you. Have a great evening.